Well, they finally did it. They did it. They finally indicted Donald Trump. It's the thing that they have been seeking for years on end, basically since 2015, when Donald Trump decided that he was going to run for the presidency. Certainly since he actually won the presidency in 2016, the left has been foaming at the mouth, seeking the day when Donald Trump would be frog-marched into a police precinct somewhere and then thrown in jail. And many prosecutors all over the nation have been aiming at this for a long time, but it was only Alvin Bragg, the brave and true, the guy who won't prosecute like any crime in New York, but he definitely will prosecute a supposed misdemeanor that happened back in 2015. That guy, well, he is going for it. The grand jury yesterday finally decided they would go forward with the indictment of Donald Trump. Alvin Bragg tweeted out, quote, "This evening, we contacted Mr. Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender to the Manhattan DA's office for arraignment on a Supreme Court indictment, which remains under seal. Guidance will be provided when the arraignment date is selected." According to the New York Times, Trump's indictment comes on as many as 34 charges of falsifications of business record. Now, here's the thing. These charges, the falsification of business record charge, that's a misdemeanor. In order to elevate that to a felony, so as to escape the statute of limitations, and so as to effectuate probably an arrest, in order for any of that to happen, they have to tie that to a campaign finance violation. The campaign finance violation, as we've talked about before, is specifically the question as to whether Stormy Daniels was paid off by Donald Trump using his own personal funds rather than using campaign funds when it actually was a quote-unquote campaign expenditure. So the question is going to come down to whether Trump paid off Stormy Daniels because he would have paid her off at any time because he's for sure signed hush money payments before, or whether he was doing it as an election expense and then failing to properly bill that to his campaign, instead paying it via Michael Cohen. Now, Michael Cohen did go to jail on the basis of pleading guilty to something like that. But then Cyrus Vance, who was the DA in New York at the time, refused to elevate those charges against Trump. The feds refused to elevate campaign finance charges against Trump. Only Alvin Bragg, 7 years later, is now doing this, which is kind of absurd. The New York Times says Donald Trump was indicted in Manhattan on Thursday for his role in paying hush money to a porn star, according to 5 people with knowledge of the matter, a historic development that will shake up the 2024 presidential race and forever mark him as the nation's first former president to face criminal charges. Listen, the Democrats have now broken the glass. And they broke glass in case of emergency. And now that glass is broken, it's going to be very hard to put it back together, because here's the deal. Democrats do this all the time. They take a step that is absolutely unprecedented in American history, say, kill the filibuster for judicial nominees. And not very long afterward, that entire process boomerangs around on them, and Republicans are ramming through Supreme Court nominees with 51 votes. Well, if you think this is the last time you are going to see a former president indicted, you got another thing coming. Now that Democrats have made clear that they are willing to go after a former president on the flimsiest of charges, and again, we'll get to how flimsy these charges are in just 1 second, you can just expect there will be politically motivated prosecutors on every side of the aisle going after everybody's favorite politicians. So we have now entered an era in which the opposition is basically under threat of legal indictment at all times. According to the New York Times, on Thursday evening, after news of the charges had been widely reported, the DA's office confirmed that Trump had been indicted and that prosecutors had contacted Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender. 3 people with knowledge of the matter said Trump was expected to turn himself in and face arraignment early next week, at which point the specific charges would be unsealed. Trump had for decades avoided criminal charges despite persistent scrutiny and repeated investigation, creating an aura of legal invincibility the indictment threatens to puncture. That's one way to put it in New York Times. The other way to put this is that this is a trumped-up charge and that they are going after Trump mainly because Alvin Bragg wanted to make a headline and because Democrats had to have their day. This whole situation just smacks of the Chekhov's gun idea. Right? There's this idea in theater, the playwright, Antonin Chekhov, that if you put a gun above the mantle in the first act, it must be used by the end of the second act. The looming threat of an indictment on Trump, that's been the gun above the mantle since 2015. It was going to be used somewhere in here. Trump himself put out a statement in response in which he called Bragg a disgrace. Trump's actual statement reads, "This is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. From the time I came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, even before I was sworn in as your president of the United States, the radical left Democrats, the enemy of the hardworking men and women of this country, have been engaged in a witch hunt to destroy the Make America Great Again movement. You remember it just like I do. Russia, 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 the Mueller hoax, Ukraine, 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 impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, the illegal and unconstitutional Mar-a-Lago raid, and now this. The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump, but now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The Democrats have cheated countless times over the decades, including spying on my campaign, but weaponizing our justice system to punish a political opponent who just so happens to be a president of the United States and by far the leading Republican candidate for president has never happened before, ever," says Donald Trump in his statement. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who was handpicked and funded by George Soros, is a disgrace. Rather than stop the unprecedented crime wave taking over New York City, he's doing Joe Biden's dirty work, ignoring the murders and burglaries and assaults he should be focused on. This is how Bragg spends his time. Again, this is all Donald Trump's statement. I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, then we'll defeat Joe Biden. We're going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again. So listen, it's a shot in the arm to Trump's campaign, just on a political level. We'll get to the politics of this after we get to the legality of all of this and what comes next in terms of procedure, because things are going to get very spicy very quickly now. Let's talk about the fact that it's very difficult to get the fruits and vegetables that you need on a daily basis. So I've been traveling a lot. I was just in Rome. So you're always on the go. And what that means is that it's very difficult to get the allotted amount of nutrients that you need. This is why I'm a huge fan of Balance of Nature. Balance of Nature fruits and veggies are the best way to make sure that you're getting essential nutritional ingredients every single day. Their capsules are packed with 100% whole food you can take at any time. Balance of Nature uses a cold vacuum process that preserves the natural phytonutrients in 16 whole fruits and 15 whole vegetables and encapsulates them for easy consumption. Balance of Nature sent a bunch of their product down to the studio for my team to try. They've all been taking them. I've been taking them as well because, thank God, they're kosher. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Shapiro for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. That's balanceofnature.com. Promo code Shapiro. Get 35% off your first preferred order. Balanceofnature.com. Again, it's helping me stay healthier. It'll help you stay healthier too. Hard to get all those vegetables and fruits in. So use Balance of Nature as a supplement. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Shapiro for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer today. Let's talk about the fact that everyone who is responsible, who has dependents, needs life insurance. It's just that simple. A good life insurance plan gives you peace of mind. If something, God forbid, happens to you, your family will have a safety net to cover mortgage payments, college costs, or other expenses. And, having life insurance through your work, it may not cut it because, frankly, if you leave your job, it doesn't follow you. You might not be able to get enough through your job. Policy Genius makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and find your lowest price. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $25 per month for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius's licensed agents work for you, not the insurance companies. That means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. There are no added fees. Your personal information remains private. Your loved ones deserve a financial safety net, and you deserve a smarter way to find and buy it. Head over to policygenius.com/Shapiro or click the link in the description. Get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. Again, policygenius.com/Shapiro. Every person who is responsible should have a life insurance policy. Be responsible. Go to policygenius.com/Shapiro. The next question is, what happens next? So apparently, Donald Trump is going to turn himself in. This has some ramifications, not only for Donald Trump's campaign, but also for the other campaigns, Ron DeSantis in particular. We'll get to that in a moment. First, he will be fingerprinted. He'll be photographed. He might even be handcuffed. Now, all of this for Trump's campaign, again, is a shot in the arm because the feeling that he has been viciously attacked for no reason other than they hate him is obviously going to boost him in the Republican primaries. Just politically speaking, that is absolutely what it's going to do. Trump, for political reasons, is going to want pictures of himself being victimized by Alvin Bragg's ridiculous prosecution here. And barring some sort of extraordinary change in the sealed charges from what we have seen before, it is a ridiculous legal case. Trump will almost certainly be accompanied at every step of the process by armed agents of the U.S. Secret Service. They are required by law to protect him at all times. It's a weird, unprecedented situation. There'll probably be some accommodations made for him. Most defendants who are arrested on felony charges are handcuffed, but it's unclear whether there will be some sort of exception made for Trump, particularly because, again, he's going to turn himself in and negotiate. His lawyers have already said he's not going to resist any sort of extradition or anything like that. The legality of the case itself is incredibly weak. Even Trump's most vicious enemies, people like Eli Mistal over at The Nation, even he says that this case is particularly weak. He suggests the odds the path to real justice, let alone prison time, runs through the Manhattan DA's office still seem very, very long. He points out that Michael Cohen, who's their key witness, initially lied to federal investigators. This makes him a not particularly good witness. The fact that the Southern District of New York has already looked at these charges and decided not to do anything. That the federal government looked at these charges and decided not to do anything. The fact that this is going to be a state of mind crime, really. How do you prove that Donald Trump paid off Stormy Daniels to keep quiet because of the election, as opposed to he paid her to keep quiet because he just wanted her to keep quiet? State of mind crimes are very difficult to prove. Intent crimes, particularly for Trump, are very, very difficult to prove. Again, Eli Mistal says so at The Nation. Very hard to think of somebody who hates Trump more than Eli Mistal, unless it's maybe David French. David French over at the New York Times says exactly the same thing. He says, most likely prosecutors will rely on an allegation of violating federal campaign finance law, specifically the claim that the hush money payments to Daniels were illegal campaign contributions. But this isn't a simple case to make. The prosecution might claim that state campaign finance laws apply to Trump and his payments violated New York law. But remember, we're talking about a presidential election. A federal statute expressly states relevant campaign finance laws supersede any state law. That is a formidable barrier to prosecuting Trump under state campaign finance laws. There's no obvious path around it. The claim that Trump violated federal law isn't necessarily frivolous, but his defense is really simple, which again is that the hush money payments had nothing to do with the election and everything to do instead with his desire to keep the story quiet. So, is this prosecution actually going to succeed? Here's the thing. Because everyone knows that the prosecution is so weak, if it does, people are going to feel it's one of the great miscarriages of justice in modern American history. If Donald Trump ends up being convicted on charges this flimsy just because it's happening in New York where everybody hates his guts, can you imagine the political consequences for the country if that goes forward right now? Now remember, this is only the first trial that Trump has on the docket. There may be others coming up. There's still something like 3 other open cases against Trump. There's a special counsel, Jack Smith, on the federal level who's currently investigating whether he interfered with the peaceful transfer of power on January 6th. He's also investigating Trump's handling of classified documents. Both of those cases are still open. Again, I think both of those probably amount to nothing. But there's a Fulton County DA named Fani Willis, again, a Democrat, who's attempting to prosecute Trump on the basis that he tried to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia. All right, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be getting into the mailbag, but to have your question answered, you have to be a member. So become a member, use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.